In this chapter, we'll be adding in the extra details for the knife, and then we'll be finished all the modeling. Alright, let me tab back into edit mode and press numpad 1 for front view. Let's add a couple of extra edge loops through here so we can round off this straight line there. So I'll press Ctrl and R through there, scroll up on the mouse till I have 2 cuts should be fine, and I'll left click and right click to keep them in place. And now let me press the Z key for wireframe. Well, right now we have an end gun over here. There's more than 4 vertices to that face. So what I'll do is press the K key for the knife tool, click on that vertex, and then to get a straight line I'll press the C key. I'll just drag that over here, left click and press enter. So that gives us a quad up there and a triangle shape down here, but it's got 4 vertices, so technically it's a quad. Alright, and now we need to round this off a little bit, so I'll select these 2 vertices, I'll press G and then X, and I'll move it to the left to round it off like that. And let me select all the vertices so I can better see the curve, and that looks good enough to me. Alright, now what we'll do is actually extrude this in toward the middle to give this some thickness. So let me enable clipping on the mirror modifier, so when we extrude these vertices to the middle, they'll actually collide and merge together. And let me select that vertex at the bottom. Then I'll zoom in to the top, and I'll hold Control and select that vertex there. So that'll select that whole line of vertices except the top one. Now let me rotate the view. And then I'll press E to extrude, and then Y to extrude on the Y-axis, and extrude it all the way over to the center like that, and then left click. And now let me select these 3 vertices there and press F. Let me just double check, make sure everything looks good down the whole line, and it does. Now we'll swing over to this side, and we can make a quad right here. So let me select that vertex, press E and then Y, bring it to the center and left click. And then I'll select these 4 vertices and press F. Alright, now I want to create more of a wedge shape here, more of a triangle. So I'm going to move these vertices along that edge loop up to meet up with the vertices above them, and I want them to merge together. So let me press A to deselect everything, then I'll press numpad 1 for front view, and then press Z for wireframe. First we'll select the vertices, so let's press B, and left click and drag over all those vertices right there. We're going to slide them up and have them merge with the ones above it. To have them automatically merge, let's enable this option in the 3D header called Auto Merge. So I'll click on that, and now once this vertex gets on top of that one, they'll merge together into one. So I'll press G twice, slide them all the way up, and then left click there. You can see now there's just one vertex there. Now that creates a little bit of a problem over here because this is dipping downward. So all we have to do is select these 2 vertices and press G and then Z, move it up until that's nice and flat. Now let me zoom out a little bit, and let's hold Alt and right click on that bottom edge loop right there. Let's move this down into the handle. So I'll press G and then Z, move it down until it intersects. And let's tab out of edit mode, and that pretty much does it for the low poly version of the knife. From here we're going to start creating more high resolution details for it, but first we'll make a duplicate and move it to the second layer to use as our low poly final game model. So let's press Shift and D to duplicate it, right click to keep it in place, and then press M and move it to the second layer. Now let's right click on this model to select it, and let's go over to the mirror modifier and click on the eye to make it invisible for the time being. So we're just working with half of it. Let's tab into edit mode now, and what we're going to do is use a bevel modifier to add some bevels to some of these edges. And just like we did before, we're going to select individual edges and add bevel weight to them so that we can pick and choose which edges we want beveled. So let's go down into the 3D header here and click on the edge select icon there so we're working with edges. Now let's go over to the modifiers and add in a bevel modifier. Let's increase the segments to 2 and we'll change the limit method to weight. Now we're going to go through and select all the edges that we want to bevel. So we'll start over here. I'll right click on that edge, hold Shift, right click on that one, then hold Alt and Shift, and we'll right click on all of these edge loops right there. That should go all the way up to the tip, well almost. So let's hold Alt and Shift, we'll right click on those edge loops, that one, that, and let's not forget the one edge up here at the tip, so I'll hold Shift and right click on that one. And I think that's all of them. Yeah, that looks good. And now I'll press the N key, and in the right side toolbar at the top, increase the mean bevel weight to 1. Then I'll press N to get out of that menu. Now let's press Tab to get out of edit mode, and we'll zoom in and check out our bevels. They're looking pretty good, but we need to smooth shade it. So I'll press the T key and choose smooth shading. Alright, so far so good. Now we're going to really smooth everything out by adding a subsurf modifier. So click on Add Modifier and add in a subdivision surface. And we'll crank up the levels to 2 or 3. I'm going to go with 3, and I'll make sure I change both levels to the same number. And now that is super smooth. does create a little bit of a problem down here. You can see these faces are stretching. All we need to do to fix that is add a couple of edge loops surrounding these details in order to kind of contain everything in that area. So let me tab back into edit mode. I'll press Ctrl and R through here. Now you can't really see where the edge loop is. It was up and out of screen. You could have just left clicked and trusted that it was there, but I just wanted to show you where it is. So I'll press Ctrl and R to add that loop cut. Left click and I'll drag it down close to those details. And I'll drop it there. Now let me zoom in and I'll press the Z key for wireframe. Now what we need to do is make sure that we keep this edge away from where the beveling is happening in this area. So I'll press G twice for edge slide, and I'll bring this down. And as I get closer to the beveled area, you can see the bevels everywhere are getting tighter. That's because the bevel modifier tries to make sure that those bevels it creates don't overlap with surrounding edges. So we're going to need to pull this back up until it's no longer affecting the bevel. So right about there looks good. And I'll left click and place it there. We'll do the same thing on the bottom here. I'll press Ctrl and R to add a loop cut, left click and drag it up until it starts affecting the bevel, and then I'll pull it back down until it's no longer affecting it, and I'll drop it there. And now that fixed up all the details in the area, and everything's looking nice and clean. Alright, let me tab back into edit mode, and now I want to work with these edges right here, and I want to get them to be nice and sharp. So let me right click on that edge there. I'll go all the way up to the top, hold Control and right click on that edge, and it'll select all those edges for me. And now I'll press the End key for the right side toolbar, because now what we need to do is tell Subsurfing not to smooth out that edge there. So at the top of this right side toolbar is a mean crease value. If we increase that to 1, you can see it negates the subsurfing effect, and we now have a nice sharp angle there. The only problem is, as we go down toward the bottom, it starts to fan out a little bit. So we're going to need to go down one more edge. So let me hold Shift, right click on that edge, and we'll increase the mean crease to 1 for all the edges. So now we have some nice perfect vertical lines there. Now if you tab out of edit mode, you can see it's almost sharp there. Everything is still being set smooth. So what we need to do is tell Blender that we want a perfectly sharp edge right here. Now let's go over to the object data buttons over here and enable a tool called Auto Smooth. Now this tool allows us to do two things. One, it will smooth any angle below the angle number you put in this field. And two, it will allow us to mark individual edges as sharp, and Blender will shade them as perfectly sharp no matter what their angle is. And that's what we want. So let's change the angle in this to 180 degrees. That way it's smoothing the entire model except edges that we mark as sharp. So now let me tab back into edit mode, and let me hold Shift and right click on the bottom edge there to deselect it, so that just all of these edges along the blade are selected. And then I'll press Control and E for the edge menu, and I'll choose Mark Sharp. And let's press Tab to get out of edit mode, press the Z key for shaded view, and you can see that's now being shaded as a perfectly sharp edge. All the way up. Well, almost all the way up, but we'll fix that later. Alright, let me tab back into edit mode, and now what I want to do is make sure that once we mirror this, that the subsurf modifier isn't going to smooth out our blade right there. So let me hold Alt and right click on that edge there, and it selects the loop all the way around. And it selects some extra vertices like these right here, but since that's in a flat area, it's not going to matter if we crease that and don't have subsurfing smoothing because it's already flat. So let's increase the mean crease value to 1. And now let's pan up to the top to where we had that shading issue, where that sharp edge wasn't going all the way up to the tip. We need some more geometry to work with up here, so I'm going to actually apply the bevel modifier so we get those extra edges. Let me tab out of edit mode because you can't apply a modifier while in edit mode. And let's go over to the modifiers now, and we'll click Apply on Bevel. Now it gives us a little error up here telling us the modifier wasn't first, but that's okay because we wanted the bevel modifier to be applied before we mirror everything. So now we can tab into edit mode, and you see we have some extra edges to work with now. So now all we need to do is right click on that edge there. We'll add some creasing to it, then press Control and E and mark it as sharp. And let's press Tab to get out of edit mode, and there we go. Nice. Now while we're at it, let's select these two edges there and increase the crease for them to 1 as well. And now let's press numpad 1 for front view, and I'll tab out of edit mode and I'll hold Shift and press 2 on the number row to bring up our second layer with our low poly knife. We're going to try and match the pointiness of this knife right now. So let me tab back into edit mode of our high poly object. We'll go down into the header and we'll go back to vertex select mode. And let's select that vertex there. I'll press G and then Z, move it up to match the shape of our low poly knife, and select that vertex and do the same thing. And there we go. Alright, let me press 1 on the number row, So we're just in the first layer, and everything is looking great so far. Alright, now let's go enable visibility of the mirror modifier and double check things. We're looking pretty good. We still need to mark the very edge of the knife blade as sharp though. So let's tab into edit mode, right click on that top vertex right there, and then let's pan down to the bottom. Hold Control and right click on that edge right, or that vertex right there. And now press Control and E and mark them all as sharp. And there we go. Nice. And this sharpness doesn't come down quite as far as it could. So let me tab back into edit mode. I'll select those two vertices, press Control and E, and mark as sharp. There we go. Nice. Alright, so we're actually almost finished the knife. We just need to create those blood grooves in the sides of it. So let me press numpad 1 for front view, and make sure you're in shaded view for this, and then just simply left click on that surface right there. What happens is, while you're in shaded view, if you click on a surface, it's going to place the 3D cursor right on top of that surface. So that's going to help us align a circle that we add with this surface to make sure that everything remains flat. So now let's press tab to go into edit mode, and I'll press shift and A, and I'll add in a circle. Then I'll immediately press the T key, and in the operator menu, I'll change the number of vertices down to 12. I'll press T to get rid of that. Let me press N to get rid of the right side toolbar as well. And now let me press the Z key for wireframe view. Then I'll press S to scale that down, and then press G to move it up into place on the groove right there. Alright, I think that looks good. Let me make it just a little bit bigger. And we don't want 3 vertices at the top, because that's going to give us a triangle up there. So I want to try and get 4 vertices up there so we can have a quad. So I'll simply press R, hold Control, and rotate it 15 degrees, then left click. Alright, now let's select those 4 vertices, press X and delete those vertices, then press the L key while hovered over those vertices to select them. And now we'll press Shift and D to duplicate, and middle click as we drag down, and that'll constrain it to the Z axis, and we'll bring it all the way down there. Now I want to mirror this vertically, so I'll press Control and M for the mirror tool, and then I'll press the Z key to mirror it on the Z axis, and then press Enter. Now let's press G and then Z and move it down and into place. And now let's connect this with the top. So I'll select these 2 vertices and press F, and then select those 2 and press F. Now we're going to need to connect all of these vertices to the surrounding edges. The problem is we don't have that many surrounding vertices to connect them to, so we're going to need to add some edge loops in order to make clean connections. So I'm going to press Control and R right through there, and I'll scroll up on the mouse until I have 2 cuts, then I'll left click and right click to keep them in the middle. So these 2 vertices here are going to connect to these 2 vertices there, and the same thing at the bottom. And let me just go up to the top, make sure those edge loops didn't cause any trouble. So we got a weird end gun up here. I don't think it's affecting the shading at all. But if you want, you can just select these 2 vertices, press W, and merge them at the center. At the very least, it just looks a little better like that. Alright, so let me press numpad 1 for front view. So these 2 vertices connect to the top 2 vertices there. So we're going to need some horizontal edge loops now to connect to each one of these side vertices. So let me press Control and R through there, left click, and I'll drag it up to right there to match up with this vertex there. And we'll do that again to that one, and then once more to there. And we'll do the same thing at the bottom. Press Control and R, drag it down to there, and then one there, and then one there. And actually what I think I'll do is add another edge loop right below that right there. So these 2 vertices will connect to those 2. And let's go up to the top and do the same thing, so that these 2 vertices are a little bit closer and they'll connect to those. Alright, so what do we do now? Now let's separate these 2 edge loops until they're on the outside of the channel. So let me hold Alt and I'll right click on that edge loop right there. And let me go up to the top, and I'll go into wireframe view by pressing Z, and then I'll press B and middle click and drag over those top vertices so that they don't slide anywhere, because they're perfectly fine where they are. Then I'll press Z to go into shaded view, and I'll go down here. Then I'll press G twice to activate edge slide, and then I'll press E and then F to align these with the left side edges, and I'll drop that right about there. That looks good. And let's do the same thing with the right edge loop. Hold Alt, right click on that edge loop, go up to the top and go in wireframe, press B, and middle click and drag on them to deselect. And we'll go down here, press Z for shaded view, press G twice for edge slide, and then press E and then F to align it with the right side, and we'll drop these right there. Let's make sure everything looks nice and clean all the way up still, and all the way down. Yep, looking good. Now what we'll do is just punch a hole through this thing and then reconnect it with our channel vertices. So let me select that top left vertex right there, then hold Control and Shift for region select, and I'll right click on that bottom right vertex right there, and it selects all of the vertices within that region. Then let's press X and erase the faces. So now we just simply need to face up the gap. So let me select these 4 vertices there and press F. Then I'll select those 2, zoom out, and press F all the way around, and it should connect it with quads all the way. Awesome. Alright, now all we have to do is fill in the gap in here. So let me hold Alt, right click on that edge loop there to select it. And for the time being, let's press the F key to create an Ngon there, just so we can go ahead and start insetting these faces. So now I'll press the I key to inset it, and I'll inset it just a little bit like that, so that we have 2 edge loops at the top of the channel, so that we can control the sharpness and the quality of the bevel going into the channel. And now let's press I to inset this again, and this edge loop here is actually going to be the furthest or the deepest part of the channel. So I think I'll bring it down to about right there. And now I'll press numpad 3 for side view, I'll press Z for wireframe, then I'll press G, and I'll just press the right arrow and bring that into the knife as deep as I want this channel to be. I think something like that looks fine. And then press enter. Let's press numpad 1 to go back into front view. And you can see we got some weird shading going on here, so we need some extra geometry in the middle. So I'll press I to inset the faces again down to about right there, and then left click. Let's see how that's looking so far. So that's looking better. But we still have a big Ngon in the middle, so we're going to get rid of that by pressing X and erasing the face. Then I'll select those 2 vertices and press F a bunch of times all the way down to the bottom. There we go. And I still want to round off the rim of this as well. So let me press Control and R to add a loop cut right through there. I'll left click and I'll right click to keep it in place. Then I'll press numpad 3 for side view, press Z for wireframe, and you can see we have a straight line right there. So I want that to be rounded off. So what I'll do is press G, then press the right arrow and bring that back until that's nice and rounded for me, just like that. Let's go back into front view, get out of edit mode, and see how it looks. Looks awesome. Alright, now just to make sure that everything looks awesome, let's press the N key for the right side toolbar, go down to the matte caps, click on that, and let's turn this into chrome. I'll press N to get rid of that. That way we can see if there are any flaws whatsoever in the reflections and fix them if we even want to. So everything's looking good up top. Everything's looking good there. We do have a little bit of a shading issue right here at that corner. So let me angle the view like this, press tab to go into edit mode, and all we really need is to surround this area with some more edge loops. So I'm going to press Control and R right there, left click and then right click to keep it in place, and that fixes the vertical shading issue. And what I'll do is select these vertices, I'll press G twice and just simply slide them over, just like that, and that fixes it. Cool. Alright, that'll do it for the modeling section then, and in the next section we'll start UV unwrapping.